Yeah. Sometimes you go through self-doubt, but that's what grace is for, isn't it? Yeah.
So today's session is about roles and responsibilities. Sandra, what's your idea of a role and responsibility for a man?
I think men typically are in positions where they have to be responsible, whether it's for people or a job, etc. They have to be leaders often, and they're often in positions where they have to have people who are dependent on them, and the decisions that they make, the way that they manage that responsibility impacts whoever it is that is reliant on them.
Okay. So what I want to know is from anyone, like, what do you guys think is the most important quality that a man should have?
I think it'll be good to hear the ladies. Most important quality for men?
I think for me, it's to have a functioning, progressive relationship with God. The importance of a man having a relationship with God is because that is the thing that's going to guide them throughout life. A man has a lot of responsibilities, a lot of roles, and there's a lot of pressure that comes with that. And I think in society you see, the way sometimes people deal with certain things. But I think having God as your guide, to lead you, he's the one who made you, he's the one who knows your purpose. So in order for you to be able to live that out and to do the things you're supposed to do, then you need him. You need to speak to him on a regular basis through prayer. You need to read his word to know the mind of God. And there's things that you might feel that you know yourself, but there's wisdom, there's wisdom in knowing God, and that wisdom comes from connecting to him and being able to have that relationship. So it's very important, in terms of the role he plays as a father, the role he plays as a husband, in his daily life, at work, relating to people, just everything that he does should be connected to, hearing from God and being guided by God.
For those who aren't Christians, what advice would you sort of give them?
I mean, I think with that, a lot of people who are non-Christian, of course they can have good marriages. If you look at the principles they live by, it tends to be Christian principles anyway. So a lot of them will be faithful in their marriage. They won't ever step out of their marriage. They'll treat their kids properly. They'll take care of their home, etc. But then the struggle with that is, as much as you as an individual can have these principles, when certain things happen to you, you need someone to almost give you that source of energy to carry on doing those things. Like Nikki was saying, if you have that relationship with God, you have someone to go back to empower you. So like some people go through situations where their health is just in a mess. They go through situations where they have no money, you got let go from work, etc. And if all you are is, I'm a provider for my family, when you can no longer do that in the way you used to, if you can't go to God to strengthen you, some people will end up underneath a train, because they just have no more hope. And I think that's where, like Nikki said, that relationship with God is where your strength comes from, to do the things according to the principles of the Bible.
Yeah, I think
it's understanding that we are weak as human beings, and our strength comes from God. But also for people that, like you said, that aren't Christians, just having a mentor, someone that they can trust and be vulnerable with. It's so, and I feel like men don't really, I don't know if they talk enough and be emotional and be vulnerable enough. But if they have that person that they can trust and be vulnerable with, another male figure, and it has to be someone that's that's lived life and has had so many experiences already that can actually give them correct guidance. I always say something that you don't want to be wrong and strong. Like some people can be really strong about something and feel something about a particular point, and they'll be so wrong about it, but because they don't want to seek guidance, they'll just continue on that destructive path of just being wrong and strong, just because they're the man and they feel like they have to dictate to whatever the situation may be. So I think that having someone that you can go to, so for us, God, for some people that aren't Christians, just being vulnerable with another male figure.
Don't you think like that obviously works? That should obviously work with Christians as well. Like actually, not just God, but being vulnerable around each other, around your fellow brothers, as we call each other. I feel like we don't really get that enough, and we're called to kind of love each other, like like not just the way the world loves, but actually that love that gives us, that is very sacrificial as Christ did. But you don't really get that enough.
It's difficult though. You got to bear that in mind, because you're showing a part of yourself to someone that you may not necessarily have a good relationship with, that strong relationship with. You know what I mean? Because for me, for example, I would only necessarily want to open up with someone if I've known them for years. And if I'm meeting someone for the first time, and this is supposed to be someone that I'm supposed to be opening up with, and it's obviously what Barbara's supposed to be opening up with, I find it harder.
It's difficult.
It's a lot
I'm
harder.
just saying in terms of like the context of the church, and I don't mean the building. I'm just talking about the people around and stuff. Like, I'm not expecting to build a relationship with me in a day and tell me your dark secrets and stuff. I'm just saying, like, are we missing a trick here where we have to be a community where when you read the Bible and you see how they took care of each other and loved each other and just there was a love there, and there was no this. I feel like the mentality of this masculine thing, it's not of the Bible at all. It's of the world, and that's kind of sapped into the church, and we've let that kind of be a huge barrier in how we kind of interact with each other, particularly as men.
I think it's difficult though, because when you say that we've been sucked into it by the world, because it's finding the balance. In the Bible, it tells you that you're the leader, that you lead your home. So it's difficult with knowing that you're meant to be strength, you're meant to be the provider, you're the leader of the household, of the family. But then also think that actually, okay, I don't have to be strong. It's the world that tells me that I need to be strong. But the Bible also tells you to be strong. But then obviously we know that we're meant to lean on God, that God is our strength.
He's our strength,
so I feel like that's a difficulty in itself, trying to strike that balance.
But then even in the Bible, like I think Jesus said, he only does as his Father says for him to do. I think that's a perfect example for any man. We were talking about the leadership role and not becoming a dictator, like you were saying about someone being wrong and strong. I think for men, of course, yes, God has put you as the head of the household, etc. But then if you are not relying on him, so many mistakes can be made. And we don't even have to go into examples of the way like men making mistakes as husbands or fathers have just destroyed people's lives completely. So there's a huge responsibility there. But anything God asks someone to do, he always gives them the grace and the resource and the empowerment to do it the way he requires them to. He doesn't just send you off to do something and then leaves you on your own.
That's interesting. So I think from what we've gathered is like the first role or responsibility of a man is to obviously build a relationship with God. So I guess we can say that we've kind of touched on that topic enough. What would you say is the next not topic, but next role or next responsibility, or is there only one? Is this build a relationship with God?
Something just came to mind actually. I think everything is for me it kind of always goes back to God, but I think for a man has a responsibility and a role to be an example. So how he lives his life, it shouldn't just be, you should be intentional about the way you live. It shouldn't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna, just do me, and without kind of thinking about how are you conducting yourself, what is the part you're playing in this world. I mean, in terms of in your family, even from like when you become like starting to become a man, as a son, as the youngest looking behind you, how are you being that example? What are you contributing, because people might feel like, oh, it's only when you get to certain places where you have like mass influence over like a large amount of people. But when even as when you're in your home around your friends, how are you being that example? Are you leading people into a negative place, or are you leading people into a positive place? And a lot of times it's the little things that we do. It's your attitude, it's the words you say, it's how you treat people. You can really destroy someone with just one word, or and I've seen this, or you could just build someone up to a point with just one word. Do you know what I mean? It's like I think a man does have a responsibility to think about these things, to be an example, in this world to those around him, and that carries him through, whether it's his family, with his brothers and sisters, mother and father, or his work colleagues, his friends, and then when you get into marriage as well. And I think that if every man had that mentality, I mean, think about what the world would be. Do you know what I mean? I think people don't realise how their actions, are. We're supposed to be salt and light at the end of the day, and I feel like you need to think about that in terms of the example that you are to people.
And I think someone mentioned it as well. I feel like society has just obviously had its way with things. In regards to being an example, some men don't know how to be. It's either because they didn't have their father there, or they just don't have those examples around them. And I think it still goes back to, again, building a relationship with God. That's what shows you
Yeah.
how to live as a man. And I
Mhm.
think if you want to simplify it, I think a role you can say is to be present. As men, let me not say as men, but guys, we want to be the leader, so it's like we're always thinking of the future and not looking at what's around us. And I thought if you look at the gun crime in UK, it's crazy, and it all stems down to where's the father? There's no man present. It doesn't have to be your biological father. It could just be a role model present for that young boy. And I feel that's a key thing. That's a key role for a man to be present, whether it's not just for your son, for your wife, or for your just your whole family. Be present, because again, you never know what could happen the next day.
I was just thinking, because like if you look in the Bible, the first man, Adam, before Eve came around, I think this is a responsibility or role we tend to associate with women, which is being a nurturer. But if you look at the role Adam had in the garden, he was taking care of the animals, tending to the garden, etc. That's a very nurturing role. And I think that's something that over time it's been so disassociated from masculinity that men don't even think that they actually have to take care of themselves, of people. Like they are actually in a role to oversee and watch the growth of so much, because like you were just saying about being present, how do you then nurture your household if you're never there? So like men who then go to work and all they want to do is bring the money home, they forget completely that they're a caretaker, that they're a steward of their home, and that role's been entrusted to them. And then like you said, like when that doesn't happen, you just see the mess that it creates. And I think that's just something that for me as a woman, like I think when I look at a man, like men that have a nurturing role in them, it makes such a difference. Okay, so how can a man nurture? A man can nurture by playing his role in a certain way. So if you think about a man as a father, he can play a nurturing role to his daughter or his son by not just providing for them, but making sure that their emotional needs are met, that he's there through difficult things they may be experiencing, whether it's through their teenage years, even as adults, just still playing that father role and being someone that they can always come to in times of trouble. I think that's a very practical way that you can see your father as a nurturer. As a husband, I think a man can be a nurturer by supporting his wife when she has ambitions she wants to achieve, and just making sure that in everything she's doing as a helper to him, that he also makes sure that she has what she needs to move forward.
I think it's about striking a balance, because I think an important feature is to have a vision. You know, you need to have a vision for what you want to do in life. So sometimes that vision can sometimes cloud, you know, the nurturing aspect. You want to go out and grind and achieve whatever it is you want to do, but you can't also forget about your family. So it's really important just to get that balance where you're working towards achieving that goal, whatever it is you want to do, you know, whether it be an inspiration, but also find the balance where you're nurturing and you're actually being there for your family.
But like, I guess my question, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in terms of being present, it's sometimes people think like it's just a physical presence, like you say, just you're being present in church, you attend, but really it's about your heart and your mind, like every part of you being present with whatever the situation, what the circumstances are, the whole of you is present. And just what you said about vision, I think that's another role or responsibility for a man to have, especially when you're thinking about having a wife and having your own family. I think we rely on men to have a vision for their lives and for their family as well. So I think it's quite an important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to ask, like, growing up for you guys, did you find that you were pushed more towards being a one-track kind of guy, where, like you were saying, having a vision and going for it and having the ambition? Or do you think you grew up also learning about the balance with the nurturing side?
Yeah, I think for me, I'll say that I found my feet. I won't say that to kind of badmouth my father. I think again it stems down from generations. It's like there's this bad habit that's come down from generation to generation. So I think for me I had to find my own feet. And it got to a point where I was bold enough to confront my father that, you know what, I don't understand this role as a man. And once you strike that conversation, your father, it hits a chord, it hits a nerve. And then that's when, you know, I started realising things. So for me, I will say that, being a man, yes, I understand the role and the responsibility of a man is difficult, especially if those before you don't have what we have now or what we're talking about now. So again, this comes down to building a relationship with God or having a mentor, someone that's been through that life experience. So I'll speak for myself when I say that, even it's still a journey I'm on now. In regards to know what role and responsibility for a man is not something that you just figure out in a day. You know, because one day you have to learn to be a father. What's the role and responsibility for that? You have to learn to be a husband. You know, so it's a process, man. But it was challenging. I'll say that.
I think it's a bit similar to you actually. I think I don't like to use the word, but I kind of had to kind of freestyle my way through, you know, trying to get the hang of it. Not that I do now, but like, cause my dad like wasn't around, like so a lot of it it was a good balance actually, because it made me learn to sort of take care of myself very, very quickly at a very young age. Started working super young, and that was good. But in terms of, I think one thing I lacked was sort of the emotional need of, how do you cater for an emotional need of a woman? So sometimes my mum will be quite stressed, or maybe it's got to a stage now where, you know, she doesn't show emotion because I just don't know how to deal with it. But perhaps maybe if I'd have seen my dad deal with it when she was stressed and stuff, I have an example way to kind of follow. So it's just little things like that, you know, it's about being present as well. And I just had to sort of just model through. And at the end of the day, you know, like, thank God, he's doing the work in me, and he's molding me to in the image of his son, and it's not easy, but we're getting there.
It just shows the grace of God, because most I will not speak for everyone, but for myself, it's like we stumble. It's like we're learning how to be a man. You learn by yourself, and it's just the grace of God that we actually get to this, you know, position where we are in now. And it's still a learning curve, but I think you were going to say something about me, man.
Come on.
I think I'm similar to you guys. I think the only thing with me is that my dad, he works long hours, so it's one of those ones where he was more. I felt as if he was more concerned about making the money, you know, than being around. I think he felt as if, you know, doing that, bringing home the bacon was, you know, his duty. So. You know, seeing that made me realize, you know, when I eventually become a father, you know, I need to definitely strike that balance where I'm not just going home and bringing the bacon, but spending time and building a relationship, because it's key. It's key. It's very vital.
So important to be present.
I think with role models, you can either follow in their footsteps, because like you said, like generations and stuff, and they do the same thing, or you hear people say, "Oh, my parents have said I love you," and those kind of things that kind of follow through. Or you can say, okay, actually I see the error in this, and I feel like I need to do better for the future.
Is what I want.
But there was something that you mentioned something about being vulnerable, like just being open as a man, saying, you know, I don't have this figured out. That goes a long way. There's strength in that. And I think as men, we tend to kind of hide that vulnerability, or that. I don't want to call it weakness, because it's not weakness.
I think there's a danger, though. I mean, what you were saying, Chloe, about sometimes you can see the way something has gone, and you make the decision to not do that. And I'm just talking from, I mean, obviously I'm not a man, but just talking from experience, and even from my brothers in the home, it's like the danger is a lot of times people don't realise like what they're actually picking up, and a lot of the things that you actually learn about being a man, being a woman, being a husband, being a father is things that you subconscious. Those things are probably more powerful than the things that are actually spoken to you. So, and sometimes you don't actually realise that those are the things that you're taking on until you're actually in that situation where you're now a father yourself, and then you realise that, oh, actually I don't know how to emotionally connect with my children, but that's because of how you were. Do you know what I mean? In your home, you know, and even if you are brought up in a home where your parents are both there, I think sometimes it takes for you, and I've realised this, when you get to a certain age, you realise that, you know what, your parents are just human. They're kind of trying to figure out as well, because before then you're thinking that, okay, well, they've got all the answers, but then you see, and then if you do have an opportunity, you said you had an opportunity to talk to your dad, where you sit down, and I've had an opportunity to talk to my parents, and you see some of the things that they have dealt with from their past, and they carry, and it makes you understand them more as people. And I think it's just about, again, it comes back to God. I think when you have that relationship, it's like, even if you are in a situation where there are things that you can pick up, if you have a relationship with God, there's that truth of God that can counter those things. Or even if you're in an environment where things are happening, and they may not even be like, you know, terrible things like, you know, your domestic abuse, or it could just be a mentality where, okay, this is how, you know, me as a wife, I'm moving, do you know what I mean? Or me as a husband, I'm moving. And it might seem positive at the time. Like, one example I could think of is like, you know, the independence of a woman in the home. Do you know what I mean? And that's something, I think, something that a lot of girls take out. So when they are now with in their homes now, in terms of the man being the leader, that's a struggle there,
Yeah.
because they've seen their mum sort of take on that role. So, and without you actually realising that, and at the time it seems like a positive thing. The world tells you, you've got to be independent, but that actually is now causing issues. Do you know what I mean? So I think that you don't always recognise these things. They don't seem immediately bad, but I think when you have a relationship with God, there's always that truth that's always there, that's reminding you of how things really are supposed to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have a reference point.
Exactly. Yeah.
But even based on everything we're saying, it sounds like the biggest role a man plays is at home.
Yeah.
It's just everyone just went straight to talking about their father and asking about like your own experiences. So it's clear that for a man, the biggest thing he needs to be aware of is that his home, his house is in order.
Because just to touch on that, as in your legacy is your kids.
Yeah.
So if you're if as men we talk about, obviously you want to be the provider, which is great. I think obviously you touched on having a balance. I think that's spot on. But if you don't have time for your seed, your legacy, then
I mean, the Bible requires it, doesn't it?
Exactly.
I think I can't remember what verse. I think one of the apostles, the qualities of being a bishop. Like if a man doesn't actually doesn't know how to look after his own children, how can he look after the household of God? So it's required from a biblical perspective as well. I think, like, just to sort of as a summary, I guess, I think men. Actually, one point I wanted to raise was the vulnerability of it. Is when you're in a relationship, maybe perhaps a relationship where is it also this is a question for you guys, because sometimes a man being vulnerable can be deemed a bit weak. Sometimes, depending on who you're with. I mean, when I say you're with your partner and stuff. So, is it also a case of choosing wise and actually being a bit more cautious about who you're vulnerable to, and if your partner can actually handle that sort of side of you, that this guy hasn't actually got it together. I thought this was the guy that is strong and stuff. Like all of a sudden you're seeing this guy all crying, and you're like, but I haven't got this together. I'm like, isn't that a fear for a guy as well? Like if she just sees me weak and stuff, is that gonna do you know what I mean? So
I think again, it's about the balance. It's about who you're with. I think for a woman, I don't think it's something that you necessarily need to run away from if the guy's being vulnerable. I think there may be fear if you're seeing a consistency of, like, not necessarily vulnerability, but perhaps weakness. Because
why is that a problem?
No, I just mean because it's about balance again. It's about, okay, so if you're always in a space where you are completely vulnerable, in that sense, when you say like crying, needing to cry on the shoulder,
Well, vulnerability doesn't necessarily mean
that
crying.
doesn't necessarily mean crying. If it's a constant thing, then when do I then have time to be vulnerable with you? How, like, do you know what I mean? Because I think in the times of vulnerability, then I have to support, and vice versa, then you have to support. So I feel like it's about, I think it might be striking the balance. What is the role of a man in a relationship? I think one of the roles for a man in a relationship is the importance of prayer, sharing the word with your partner. Obviously, as Christians, it's something that's very important with our walk with God. So we need to be able to come to a place where we can do that together, and where He's going to lead on that, because we know that a man is supposed to be a leader in our household. And I think that just shows being vulnerable with your partner is so important, and knowing that you can share things with someone that you're going to potentially marry, with your wife, with your husband. You should be able to be open and share anything that's going on in your life, in your personal space, even in your walk with God. You want to share that with your wife or your partner. So all those things are really important.
Looking at vulnerability here as being weak,
Yeah,
because the truth of the matter, I think a marriage in general, I don't think vulnerability should be turned on and turned off at the end of the day. I don't, because like you said, vulnerability is not necessarily about crying. Vulnerability is just being open and not being afraid to say, look, this is the issue and I need help or whatever. So that can be a constant sort of thing. I think vulnerability takes strength, to be honest with you. I think like you said, that I think we're confusing vulnerability with weakness, and I think when you're not vulnerable as a man, because if the woman is there to be the help me, in order for you to accept that help, there has to be like a sense of vulnerability, and the same with the woman as well. Do you know what I mean? I think you have to be in that space where you are open and you are emotionally available. And I think that takes vulnerability. I think you're right about it's not about somebody sort of. I think weakness is one thing, and not to say that weakness is bad, but I think at some point you have to be able to embrace that weakness and recognize. Again, this is where God comes in. The Bible says that when we are weak, He is strong through us. So at the end of the day, we are weak beings. At the end of the day, that's why we need a savior. Do you know what I mean? But it's how you channel that. It's like, okay, I know that I'm weak in the situation, but I've got God, and that makes me strong. But you're not sort of like having a pity party and wallowing in that. I think that's different. I think vulnerability is not a bad thing. I think it's actually quite a positive thing for a marriage when both people are able to be that open and that real with each other. That means that there's no boundaries. That means that you can say anything and you can get through anything because you can just talk about anything and no one's going to throw that in your face. Do you know what I mean? Because you're both being vulnerable together. So you're using that to kind of build the relationship.
Yeah, just a quick one to touch on vulnerability. I think someone mentioned, crying as being vulnerable, which it can be, but I feel like the issue of society is that we're misunderstanding vulnerability and actually crying.
Yeah, that's true. You've cried on your girl before.
I'll be real. There was a point where like life was just hard, and it wasn't a thing of I was bawling. It was a thing of tired. Like, I think that was the first time I cried to her, and she was like. But for me, that changed our relationship. Because when I could open up to her, and she saw me being that vulnerable, that's probably when I think it was after I proposed. So I was like, but at the same time, it was a thing that, and that's when someone said that, crying is weakness, I was like, no, it doesn't, because it can spark a relationship. So,
no, but some boys are crybabies.
Yeah, obviously, but at the same time, if you marry someone that's a crybaby, because a man, I won't say demand respect, but they're looking for that. So how do you put that across to them where you're not belittling them?
But then they might be with someone that is absolutely fine with that. So it's again, it depends a bit about the level of crying.
Right. Okay.
So, they might be fine with the level of. They may be able to deal with that. So it depends on who you're with. I know me personally. I'm a crybaby, so I don't know if I could deal with that.
You're more cry like.
But this is it's the kind of crying.
Sometimes I'm just taking not all.
Oh, this is their balance. If one's crying, one's straight. Can't both be crying. Who's gonna support?
But then also it is like what is the reason for the tears though? And even with females, like some girls will cry over like.
Oh, my brother tells me not to cry all the time.
And then there's some men like it's fair enough like going for a difficult patch and then you get upset and then you want to open up to your woman and that's fine. But then after the crying, like, are you gonna do something about it? Or will you come back and cry again tomorrow?
I don't want to cry about
and I think that's the thing about respect with men. It's like honestly, a lot of the time I think women like argue most about the man not being vulnerable or opening up to her, and they feel like they're not connecting because he seems distant and he's not talking to her. So often women do want the man to be vulnerable, but then I guess if too vulnerable, but it's just what happens after the vulnerability, because you don't want a man who makes it an excuse that he's in a vulnerable place and then ends up doing absolutely nothing to fix the situation. I think that's when you might lose respect from a woman.
Okay, so obviously let's flip it now. So when the female continues, she consistently cries.
That's a bit too much.
How do you want us as a man?
Especially if guys are like find it difficult to like deal with crying and stuff.
So how would you want us to deal with that? Because obviously you guys are saying if a man's crying too much, like right, stop. What's the
you can tell us not to cry. You can say, oh, that's not something that you need to cry about.
You have to be there.
I can hear that, and I can hear that.
Yeah, but you said that's how you said something important. Your brother exactly.
My brother said that to me. I recently had an argument with my aunt, and I don't argue with people, right? So like I don't get into altercation like that. And I thought that she really overstepped the boundary. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. I'm an adult. I'm almost 30 years old. Like, I think you've overstepped. So we had a bit of an altercation. And in my passion, I started crying. My brother's like, what are you crying for? Why are you crying? You don't need to cry. Like, say your point, absolutely fine. You guys can discuss it without you crying. And it to be fair, isn't that, even my mum says it to me. Well, and she's a crybaby. So she doesn't say, why are you crying? So I understand that it can be frustrating for other people if you cry all the time. I get that, but at the end of the day, if I'm gonna cry, I'm gonna cry. So you can say as much as you like, I'm gonna cry. But I mean, in other things, you just need to like hold us, just give us a hug, so I understand.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine.
And also, I feel like, to be fair, for women, I think we learn how to manage our emotions. Like, there are some girls who always just anything. I broke a nail, tears. Like, I'm in debt, tears. Like, obviously you can cry over being in debt, but I just mean we have to often learn how to get the message across to our men. Like, just to help him understand what we're going through. Because as guys, sometimes they see a girl crying and they freeze. Yeah. Like, you would think that they saw like a car accident just happen because they just don't know what to do with it. But I think just being emotionally intelligent and still like letting him understand like what the issue is. Still crying.
That's a role for a guy. Understand emotional intelligence.
Yes,
it gets through it.
What responsibility does a man play in a woman's life?
I think first and foremost, his role as a father is really important. Because then you see what a man, that's your role model, to see what a man is supposed to be in your life.
So what his relationship with his dad?
No, so for a woman, so me as a woman, what my father would have played, the role he would have played in my life. But I didn't grow up with a father in my life, so I can't necessarily talk about the differences, because I suppose I'm ignorance is bliss. I'm ignorant to it. But I think that the role as a father is so important for a woman, so that she knows what to look for outside, and that's saying that he's a good role model as a father. Then so I think that's so important, because I think the women make a lot of mistakes when seeking a partner, because of the roles that they've had in the role models they've had in their lives. And I think as well for men, for those that, for like myself, who hasn't grown up with a father in my life, I don't think don't necessarily have family members who feel like they need to step into that role either. So I could say that categorically, I did not have a male role model per se in my life. I have older brothers, but I don't necessarily know if they were role models for me to know what to look for. I feel like some of you guys said before that you've kind of just found your feet. I think I kind of found my feet. And then obviously you read scripture and stuff, so I think I kind of am finding my feet, so to speak. But so I think that's really important.
I've got a question. So I read in a book once that all men want is respect, and all women want is love. And I think that's really key. I think women at the end of the day want someone that is gonna be there for them, listen to their problems, really show that love that I guess, the Bible says, and maybe even what, those movies have, that love that...
that fake stuff on the
but they want it though. I think that's what they want.
I think both want both. I think women want...
I
don't know, it's not like we don't want respect.
I do, but I want respect more.
You want respect more than you want love? Are you sure?
I think you have to understand.
Do they not go hand in hand?
Exactly.
So if you love someone, you respect them, no?
Exactly.
You can respect someone and not even like them.
That's
I said you can respect someone and not even like them. To be honest with you, there's people out there that you might see moving a certain way, and like even like and just play the
even when you think about like the fear of a child that has for like a parent, it's like you have to respect your mum and dad, but then you don't necessarily have a relationship with them, a bond with them. I mean, obviously your family you love. But that evokes that next level type of love that you would want to have between yourselves as a family.
I've got a question actually for you. So, I mean, would you say, as you're at the moment, your lack of, the fact that you didn't have a male figure, you had plenty, I'm sure, but a male figure in your life growing up and stuff, has that really affected the way you relate to guys?
I don't think so. I think that, if anything, I suppose I'm lucky, just because of my personality and the way I am, and being able to just be relatable to people, and just be, I think I'm just a little bit easygoing. So I think that it hasn't really had so much of an effect. I mean, grew up in a Christian household, Catholic, and then I gave my life to Christ about 6 years ago. But then I think about 4 years, so I was having a conversation with my friend and I was telling them that I was adopted as a child. And my one of my potential birth fathers died a couple of years ago, and I was telling him about that and how it affected me. Like, it really did affect me, but I don't know why. And as somebody that I never really was interested about getting in touch with, like, I just not bothered for no reason, no sort of ill feelings and stuff. And he said to me that you realise that it's your Father in heaven that's always had you. And I think for me that was so important, and that kind of changed just my perspective on life, even like my relationship with God. That completely changed and took it to a completely different level. So, but overall, I don't think it's affected me. I mean, other people might say different, or like if I was with a partner, they may think differently, but I don't personally think it's affected me. And I think I see how it affects other women. Just even sometimes women have difficulties like talking to guys, and just talking to guys and seeing them as friends, seeing them as brothers, rather than just seeing guys as, okay, I have to be like a sexual figure for that person. And I think a lot of women struggle with that when they haven't got any male role models or any male figures in their lives, perhaps.
I think as well that I think it can work another way as well, that if you do have a male figure in your life, like as a father, but what sort of role that they actually play. And I think for me, I think that one of the things I experienced was my mum, I think, had a more dominant personality. And I think I remember her talking to me actually about relationships and about, you know, how to be. And I know she didn't mean anything by it, but her whole thing was about being very strong and not letting a man, you know, you got to do this, even to the point where along the lines of, it's better for a man to love you more than you love them. And I know that was maybe a sort of... I don't know. I know that was a lot to do with being very, like, you know, as a woman, for her to try to make sure that I was always, you know, sort of taken care of and protecting myself. And maybe, again, you know, I think when you get older, you understand why people say those sorts of things and where they're coming from and their experiences. Because I've talked a lot to both my parents about different things that have really opened my eyes to things. I think, I know I'll go back to this, but I think when someone, and this is one thing I've realised as well from experience, when someone has a relationship with God, then they have accountability, which means that there's, you know, within reason, I mean, if that person really does have a relationship with God, it means that a lot of things that, because I was like in a long distance relationship, and whereas in certain situations you might be fearful about certain things, do you know what I mean, about that person, but when you know where someone's coming from, it's like, obviously they don't want to do anything to hurt you, but even more than that, they're thinking about, well, am I going to do something that's going to
displease God?
Yeah, exactly. And so when you have that accountability, it means that there's a lot of things that you know that they can't do. Do you know what I mean? Whereas in other situations, it's like there's not that boundary. So someone has sort of boundaries in terms of how they're going to be, and I think that's something that I feel is imperative for me in a relationship, because otherwise, you know, who are you accountable to? And it's not about being accountable to a human being. It's like the accountability to God is totally different. And I think when you have that as your, outside of obviously that man feeling like, okay, I don't want to do something to, you know, upset my wife and go against that deeper thing is going to stop you. Do you know what I mean? When
the Holy Spirit.
Like, you know, people stepping out in their marriages or doing certain things or treating their wife a certain way, that's going to convict you. And I think there's a covering in that, and there's a safeness around that makes me feel like without it, you know, you don't know, what's, you know, anything could kind of happen. So I feel like that's definitely something that a man should have. I think.
So how do you? Cause I know a lot of females say this. You know, what are you looking for in a man? I'm looking for a God-fearing man, and I hear that a lot. You know, so what does a God-fearing man look like? Cause
it's not somebody who is, and I think this is the thing, because sometimes you've got these guys.
Just a quick one, to certain topics, because you get some people that are in a position of obviously the church and all that.
That's what I was about to say.
It's like, what do you define as
so it's not about, because you see some guys that they feel like then they coach you whatever, and they kind of start spitting all this kind of, you know, Bible scripture, you know, exactly. And it's like they feel like it's not even that. When I think of that, I think of someone like if you're talking about the Bible, I think of like someone like David, for example. Now, David was far from perfect, as we know, but he had a heart for God. You know, somebody who is a real person. Yeah, they may mess up, whatever, but they, in their heart, they have a heart for God that they want to, they want to change. They want to be better. They have that ongoing relationship where it's an ongoing relationship with God. It's not somebody who's kind of just portraying, because a lot of times those people are the ones that are gonna
the worst.
Yeah. Someone who acknowledges that they're not perfect. Do you know what I mean?
I've got a question. So you're saying to me, a man like David, and David, we all know he had a heart for God.
Yes.
But you know, he wasn't perfect.
Yeah.
He saw a woman. You know, you sexualized her, you went for her.
Yeah.
And even though he had many wives as well. So if your man cheated on you, but he still had that heart for God, what you gonna do?
Because I say that because when we say things like that, okay, with David, it could give people the wrong impression. Well, okay, actually, because when they've then stepped out, but I'm David, I really love the Lord, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. And people shouldn't feel like they can make excuses on the excuses, on the relation of what other people have done. No. Just because you're, like I always say, like just because you have this character about you, I'm naturally angry or I'm naturally flirtatious or whatever, doesn't mean that's okay. Just because I'm like a David doesn't make it okay. You have to be better. You have a responsibility to be better. We know better because we can see it all. Jesus paved the way. We've got it all written down for us. So we have no excuse but to strive to be better. So it isn't an excuse just because David made mistakes but loved the Lord doesn't make an excuse for you to be able to do those things.
You're right. The reason why I said David is because I just see David more as, and I know you're right. That's not to say that that was not.
I think people could be cheating.
That's not the point I was making about you can just do whatever and it's like I've got a heart for God. It's not really that. It's just that I just see David as just more of like a real person who has a heart for God. Like not like a Pharisee. Like you could say the Pharisees were very, someone who's just they. Do you know what I mean? I can't even explain it. I just mean somebody who is. They are. When I say flawed, I'm not saying I'm making excuses for their flaws, but we all have things that we're working on and everything. I'm just somebody who ultimately they know that they need God. They know that they need God, and they're holding on to Him to in order to be able to be the best they can be. I'm not making excuses for anything, and obviously you shouldn't make excuses for certain things. You have to take responsibility, and obviously David did a lot of things, but I think more in the fact his relationship with God. We see the Psalms, the way he poured out his heart, the way he recognized how broken even some.
But so like if you think about Joseph, Joseph was one who had a heart for God, and when he was in a situation with Potiphar's wife, he said, "I cannot sin against God." So what women want, you when they say God-fearing man, they want someone who's going to choose God. In the world we're in, let's be honest, women are offering it up on the plate, and so you want a guy who's just going to be not because I'm going home to a wife who looks like an Instagram model, but because I cannot sin against God. That's how you can. That's how you can. That's not enough. I'll tell you what. There is, and as women, when you're courting or dating or whatever, there are some guys, before you eat a meal, they'll speak tongues over the food, everything, but best believe they will still be in Cocoa Bar doing the very next day. But then you'll have some guys who you might not even necessarily hear it out the mouth that they're Christian, but by their fruit you will know. Do you know what I mean? And so when you've got I'll give Damien's an example. When Damien and I were friends before we started going out, right? And I remember just in normal conversations, that would be sending me music from Spotify, just like gospel songs from Spotify. He'll be like, I heard this track, that was really nice, or he'll send me this message he was watching on YouTube, and I thought, oh god, this guy is actually, he really cares about my spiritual.
I was just trying to get
somehow. Maybe, but I think it just naturally would come out of him. And even when sometimes you're talking about things, he'll be like, oh, do you know what, I don't even do those things anymore. He'll just be saying things, and it's true, because he'll come to church and you go home Saturday night, what's Dami doing? He'll be like, oh, I'm just reading this Rabbi Zachariah's book. And you think, wow, who does that? But I feel like with a man who's rooted in God, they don't have to say it.
They don't.
You yourself, you can see it. And then a man who's faking it, they don't have to tell you. You can see it. You can see it, because you'll see what they're liking on Instagram. You'll see the kind of people they're talking to. You'll see the friends that they choose to hang around with. You can't
sometimes people only see what they want to see, though.
Yeah, no, for sure.
That's on you.
And that's on you. Yeah, absolutely.
Covered by your own face. But I'm still, know it's kinda hard, but still, yeah. Bro, I'm still, yeah. Never switch gears, yeah. Can't do this on my own. So far gone when I get into the zone. Still, the doubts do roam. Cause people out here make me feel like I'm wrong. Still, I feel like I'm home. I put in this work, I'm trying to make it known. Couple years back, the passion was born.